So let's get things started. I'd like to introduce our speakers today. Our first speaker will be James Guild. James is from BCS Technologies, and he's the Regional VP. And our second speaker will be Jonathan Bartow, the Senior Systems Engineer at SAS. Thank you guys for joining us today. James, you want to kick off?
Yes, sure. Thank you, David. So good morning, everybody. Thanks, David, and thank you to CHP this morning for hosting us and allowing us to share some of our thoughts with you guys this morning. Yeah, look, we're really happy to be here, myself and Jonathan, and we'll do a quick introduction to ourselves shortly. But really, thank you for joining the session this morning. Really, I guess we're hoping to share with you some ideas, some concepts, some approaches, and some examples of, I guess, how you can use analytics to make better decisions in your organization. So there's going to be a lot of interesting and thought-provoking content, and we're really excited to sort of share that with you this morning. In terms of an agenda, I guess we'll kick off with, I guess, what Jonathan and I have sort of called the 5 key factors that will drive your success in your analytics evolutionary journey. So really, that's about starting at the high level, understanding what's the problem that you're trying to solve or the opportunity that you're trying to unlock, really identifying that business need. And we'll give you some food for thought on how to sort of go about scoping that out. Then we move into, I guess, a little bit more of the practicalities of how to turn that into a reality. And we'll talk a bit about, understanding the questions that you're looking to answer and solve, about getting your data right. So making sure you're building those key insights from the richest, truest, most comprehensive data source. And then Jono will kindly share, SAS is a business that's been around for sort of 47 years in providing solutions, really talking about, the art of what's possible. So giving you some inspiration on some of the things you can be thinking about, and how SAS can help you on that journey. And then, of course, we'll wrap it up with a little bit of, how you can get started today, because I think many times some people think, it's going to take ages to extract some value out of any analytical projects or work that you're participating in. But there's lots of quick wins that your business can have along the way. And we'll hopefully sort of share some ideas on those shortly. I'll hand it over to Jonathan very quickly to tell you a little bit about himself. So over to you, Jono.
Thanks a lot for that, James, and thanks for that kind introduction, David, as well. Really great to be here. I suppose to start off for myself, I just hope that everybody is coping okay during these tough times in COVID. I know, everyone's dialing in from very different areas. I think we've got over 30 people now who've joined, so welcome to this webinar today. I love doing these kind of things. I've been through quite a transition in my career, as you can see from the photos. The old me used to crawl around in beaches and install wacky sensor equipment on rare and endemic species of turtle up in the northwest shelf of Western Australia. So I started my career as a marine biologist. I ran a company in data visualization for 5 years because for me, visualizing information and the data we collected from the turtle tracking was really important. And then I moved across to SAS. So SAS is the leader in advanced analytics. I've spent 6 years here. I'm over in Brisbane now from WA, having a great time working across a variety of industries. So government, energy utilities, financial services, consumer health products. I'm working really closely with James and BCS, and really excited to be here today and share some insights and stories, some war wounds in the analytics world. So I'll probably hand back to James so he can give you a bit of background on himself as well.
Thanks, Jono. You still look great after a few war wounds. That's saying a lot, right? So you can survive. Yeah, very quickly, a little bit about myself. Look, I've spent sort of the last 20 years of my career working with teams, organizations, and individuals to really understand and quantify the impact of consumer and shopper behavior changes. So working with a couple of businesses in that space. I love problem solving, and that's probably why I'm so nosy and curious about people's behavior. And I wouldn't have sort of recently joined BCS if I wasn't interested in technology. And I guess what excites me about technology and the application of that is really about how you can use it to solve problems and do it faster, more intuitively, more accurately, using technology to do that. And at the same time, it's always good to do that under a little bit of pressure. So I've got a slight competitive edge where I really enjoy competing, and solving a problem is sort of like a game in my words, of trying to find the answer as quick as you can with the best possible solution. And doing that in a competitive environment really pushes yourself further. So it's great to be here. And like John, I've got many war wounds and a few victories. So look, there's sort of evidence there that you don't have to get it right all the time, but it's about actually really just making a go of it. So we'll kick off with how to approach a business problem with an analytical mindset. And this is a really good, I guess, helicopter starting point for your organization of thinking about, okay, well, we know we've got a problem or a challenge we're looking to solve. How do we do that with an analytical mindset? And I guess the easiest thing to sort of guide you in your journey is really about getting started. So some of us on the call might be sort of novices in the analytical space. You might just be starting your analytical journey. That's fine. Some of us may be much more advanced and already applying, certain techniques, models, data sets to problems. That's great too. There's still more room to grow as you go on your journey. But the key thing, I think, over many years of what we've worked out, or I guess understood, is that actually getting started is the biggest thing. There's lots of small, quick wins on the way, sometimes big wins. But unless you start, you're not going to be able to release and realize the potential within your organization. So I'll hand over to Jonathan now to sort of take control and walk you through the next few phases. And I think getting started, just very quickly, it's really important to get started because Jonathan's going to show you very quickly about how the landscape changes.
Yeah, I love this quote. I think a lot of people are really scared to start, right? And a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking about things, but in my experience, it's about taking an agile approach and really getting quick wins on the board. And sometimes getting started is, a lot more simple than people realize. So, I'd love to sort of give you a bit of background on where I got started. So when I first started in data science, the landscape wasn't as busy as it is today. So this was, almost 10 years ago when we talked about analytics tools, and you could see that Hadoop was entering into the market. It was going to be the next biggest thing. It was going to solve all of the world's problems. We had the likes of Tableau and Teradata looking at analytics and visualization. And then we had some business intelligence companies that were really leading the charge, like MicroStrategy at the time was pretty big, and you had the SAPs and the Oracles of the world. So I would say it wasn't a complex landscape. It was quite simple back in those days. And so when I got started, this was really what I navigated through to today, where, we can see that this is actually a lot more complex. This data and AI landscape is chaos. There's a significant amount of chaos in this space, but there's also a whole heap of opportunity, right? And flicking through slides is certainly a way of creating some chaos in this webinar as well. So, but yeah, don't strain your eyes and try and look at all the individual logos. But this is what people are trying to navigate through today. And it's really hard. And this is what's paralyzing a lot of organizations is, how do I get started if I don't even know how to fit all these different jigsaw pieces together? And people focus a lot on the tools and the technology, and you can see here there's various different layers to a data and AI capability, right? There's infrastructure, there's analytics and machine learning, there's enterprise applications, you've even got your open source layer and your APIs. There's so many different elements to what makes up a successful data and AI capability. So, I think for me, the quote that I like to talk about is this one here around, in the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. And I love this one because my life and what I do in the analytics world is about pulling opportunity out of chaos. I spend a lot of my time with various organizations thinking about the different business problems that they're trying to solve and what kind of value that's going to bring to their organization. I use examples like a call center. You've got agents who are handling calls. You've got sellers on the front line who are selling products, right? what are the opportunities for them? How can they interact with customers better? How can you use information to help guide those decisions? So, you know, in all of this, there's a lot of opportunity that you can explore. And it's just about taking the time and taking that step back, to James's point, and actually starting and thinking about what those questions are you're trying to solve in your business. Interestingly enough, Gartner ran a survey on over 450 board of directors. Now, this was done globally, so this isn't just a sample from the US. But what was interesting about this survey is that analytics and AI was ranked number 1 and 2 top game-changing technologies required to emerge stronger from the COVID-19 crisis. And, you know, for me, this is a lot about the opportunity, right? We're living in a world where we're transitioning and we're hopefully going to come out stronger off the back of this. And using tools and technology like analytics and AI is really about transforming your business and transforming the way that you do things. So even Gartner's talking about the opportunity for AI and analytics. Board of directors are talking about it. So, you know, it's really good that we're here today. And however you're dialing in, whether you're an analyst and you're working with data, or you're an executive in your company and you're thinking about these types of questions, you know, this is really, really a good sort of driver to keep pushing forward. And I can tell you now, I don't just have this beard because, you know, I like growing a beard. We're really busy in the analytics market. Like, we've got so much opportunity going on across the board. And a lot of that is because people are rethinking the way they approach their markets and the way they deal with the world. So I kind of alluded to it earlier. If you cast your mind back to that chaos of different tools and technology, the opportunity with analytics is more than just tools. And, you know, I spent a lot of my career focusing on the technology side. So installing, you know, funky tracking systems, coding and developing, you know, cool front ends, building applications. At the moment, I work with a lot of IoT sensors, so smart meter devices. And I do think a lot about tools because that's what I use day to day. But where I spend a lot of my time with businesses is actually looking across multiple different spectrums. And this is what's so fantastic about the partnership with BCS, is together we can tackle all these different elements in an organization. So the people are really critical. The people are the ones at the front end, the users, whether it's in the call center agency or whether it's people in your business, your executive layer or your management layer. It's really critical that they understand that analytics is an opportunity within the business. The processes are really critical as well. I mean, processes are changing. The way that we do things are changing. We're moving from a very linear-based way of working to more agile, sort of iterative ways of working. And organizations that adopt, you know, new processes and align their processes with what is an analytics capability really do yield a lot of value. The data, obviously, we're going to spend a lot of time today on the data. I think this is obviously a critical foundation piece for any analytics strategy. Technology is key, and we've spoken about that, but more so the mindset and the culture. And you'll see behind me, I've got some company values. I'm sitting between accountable and curious at the moment. And that's really about driving the type of culture within your organization that rewards people for thinking differently, that rewards people for asking questions and understanding questions and drivers in the business. So I would totally recommend that you think about all these different elements in your business and what you do day to day, and think about, you know, how do the people interact with analytics? How are the processes set up so that you can start doing things quicker and more agile? Do you have the right technology on board, or are you building silos? Do you have your data right? And what's the overall culture of your organization? And this is where we start looking at the overall opportunity with analytics, and that it's more than just tools. So we've covered off sort of the mindset and, you know, that really high level view as to how do we get started around analytics. But I think what's important is understanding the questions, and the questions are really the starting point. And it's kind of counterintuitive. a lot of people start with the data and the technology and that side of things, but they actually lose sight of the questions. And I think it's important that you think about, you know, this oldie but a goodie maturity model, right? So you want to start by being honest about where you're at in this maturity curve, because it is something that has a degree of difficulty and then obviously a degree of value. So if you look in the bottom left, obviously you have information, raw data in and of itself, and then you've got your descriptive analytics. So this is questions around what happened. You know, this is sort of, I call this kind of driving your car in the rear view mirror. It's looking at what happened historically and just describing that and using, you know, some hindsight to do that. You start moving into diagnostic analytics, where you start asking questions like, why did it happen? You know, you've identified what happened, you know what the trend is, why did it happen? And then you start building some insights. And this is where my world comes in around predictive analytics and advanced analytics. You want to start asking questions like, what will happen? What do we think will happen over the next 3 months or 6 months? Whether it's sales, whether it's supply chain, logistics. Moving into that predictive analytics space tends to add a lot of value to those questions and a lot of value to your business. And then obviously the holy grail of optimization, where you start adopting foresight. How can we make something happen? So how can we start making decisions in our business that can actually transform the way we do things, or help us push into a market which we've never been before, or disrupt our market entirely? And this type of optimization capability is how some of the most successful companies, and particularly startup companies, are penetrating new markets across the globe. So I love this, but I also want you to think that this is not I have to do descriptive analytics to get to diagnostic analytics, to get to predictive analytics. As we said earlier, you can start with prescriptive analytics. You might have a business problem or a business question, and you ask yourself, how can I make this happen? How can I make something happen? And there's approaches that BCS and SAS can support with, where we can get you wins in that space as well, without having to go down a 2-year, 3-year transformation strategy. Obviously, critically, and you know, this is something that needs to be spoken about, is the data management piece. You could have the best models in the world, the best predictive analytics, the best optimization, but if you don't have the right data, if you're not capturing, validating, thinking about the migration of that data, the enrichment of that data, the cleansing and the verification, you really are not going to have a successful analytics maturity in your organization. So data management is a critical piece of an analytics capability. And you can see how a lot of organizations and a lot of people would get stuck in the data management space and spend a lot of time going in circles around getting their data right. And it's because it is so important, but there are strategies and frameworks and ways that you can actually harness the data you've got today. And we'll be covering off some examples later on in the webinar that James will kindly take us through. This is another interesting sort of fact, and I see this all the time. I see a lot of analytics investments and projects that actually fail to deliver the business value. And in fact, we reckon about 35% of people report the inability to connect data and analytics to business value. And this a lot of the time is because they can't match the actual analytics capability with the questions they're trying to solve. So they do analytics for the sake of doing it. They hire data scientists and data science teams just to do data science, as opposed to transform their business and actually think carefully about how they can get value from what they're doing. And this is a really big problem in the market. And I would stress anybody on this call to think about their analytics program or their potential analytics program, and really think carefully about how you're going to get value at each stage in that journey. So not waiting 2 years to deliver value from an analytical model, actually getting quick wins on the board and achieving ROI early to justify that activity. So to begin this journey, obviously we've said you need to understand the question or the problem you're looking to solve. And then there's a whole number of layers additional to that. So we've talked about how critical the data management side of things is. And we call this data ops. So it's really about mapping those questions with the actual information that you've got in your business and how you operate that data. So do you have the right governance, etc., around that data? And I know James is going to spend a lot of time in that piece because I've worked with BCS in the past and they do that stuff really well. This is their bread and butter. The developing models piece is another really, really critical capability. So if you're looking at solving any question or problem, you need to first understand the data. You need to then understand what models you need to develop. And I call these sort of automation sort of steps or even recommendation engines or particular outcomes off the back of that data that you then deploy. Now, the deploying of the models what we call the last mile of analytics. A lot of organizations really struggle with this piece. They get the data right, they develop a whole heap of models, and then they really struggle to actually embed those models or that analytics into business processes so that they can make decisions on a day-to-day basis. I mean, you can have really clever people building really good models, but if you can't actually embed them in what you do day to day and things that your customers are interacting with or things that your call centers interacting with or things in your business, well, then it just sits on a computer somewhere on a server somewhere and doesn't actually add value to your business. So you've got to think about the question. You've got to develop all these capabilities in between before you even get to, okay, now we're making decisions. We're making them faster, smarter, better, which is what gets James and I up in the morning every day. I've included this as an example of some of the questions that we work with customers, and I'm seeing this across the board. So if you look from, you know, the bottom up, what happened, how many did we sell, how many customers, which segment should we target, what channels, what geography, who are the outliers, what are the trends? And then we start getting to the top. So you can see the questions start becoming a lot more mature and a lot more complex. You know, so from the top down, we can start seeing questions like, how do we automate and mine untapped information assets? How do we optimize brand and channel activity to generate the right level of inquiries from target segments? And, you know, you can plot these questions on that analytics maturity curve I showed earlier. And so if you start with the bottom questions, obviously this sits more in the business intelligence space. So you've got that foundation capability around raw data, cleaning and integrating that mastered data. You've got your two spectrums, the ability to drive outcomes and the degree of intelligence and value. And then as you start thinking about these questions, you can see each of them sits in a different level of analytics maturity. So some questions are about alerting, some questions are more about ad hoc reporting, some questions are just about standard reports. But where we start to get really, really valuable outcomes in our business is when we start driving analytics questions. So, you know, using statistical analysis to understand why you're getting level of returns of product. So why is this particular product that you've just released on the market being sent back by your customers? You know, what are the drivers we need to address? What are the levers and pulleys that we can pull on? What's the financial impact? So how do you start actually looking ahead 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, and understanding financial impact, you know, of particular events in the globe and how that's going to impact your business, and understanding, you know, macroeconomic variables and feeding them into your business processes. And then obviously your optimization around optimizing brand and channel activity, generating the right level of inquiries from target segments. And this is where we're seeing a lot of value. I'm seeing a lot of work being done in the machine learning and AI space around unstructured data, particularly looking at complaints handling and NPS scoring and putting that in. So it's really important to sort of understand both the analytics maturity, the questions you're trying to ask, but then when you've identified the business need, you need to ensure you have a single source of truth. What I see a lot of organizations doing is building silos. So I see across the board, across multiple industries, you know, people building really complex sort of data silos, whether it's Excel spreadsheets or different servers. and replicating data across multiple systems. So one thing you need to think very carefully about is what of that information is what you call your gold standard. You know, and gold standard is data which we know is reliable. We have governance and lineage across that data. It's visible and transparent. All the people in the business understand how to leverage that data. You've got regular monitoring and feedback, and you've also got automated and accessible reports sitting across that. So if you don't have all of the clarity, engagement, ownership, and accountability across that single source of truth, you're not going to be successful in your analytics strategy. You're just going to build silos in your organization, and it's going to be chaos to manage. So I'm going to hand back to James now, who's going to take us down to those foundational pieces around getting the data right.
Thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, look, I guess this is probably the fundamental pillar, if you can remember that visual that Jono shared on the sort of the 3 circles, where you're really starting your journey and getting your data assets in the most robust and easily extractable format. And look, I guess this is where BCS technology comes into play, right? In our heartland, we're sort of a software development and IT professional services business, which really means, you know, managing data and setting up data for success is our bread and butter. And it's what we do. And we've been doing it for 15 years, and it's across multiple sectors and industries. And it's really important to get it right before you really extract value on that analytical journey and that curve that we saw earlier on. So I wanted to sort of walk you through a little bit of an example of what that really means in reality. So, you know, many of us on this call aren't data experts or data scientists. So, you know, this can be a little bit sort of confronting at times, but it doesn't need to be. And I think that's where you've really got to think about your business and, you know, who you want to partner with, what sort of people you might want to include in your team. You know, John spoke about setting that up, and it's not always about having that in-house. You can use partners and you can use suppliers to do that. And, you know, BCS or SAS, we can play a part in that too. But it's really about getting your data right with these 4 core pillars. So you want to produce data that's going to help you cultivate analytics. Whatever those business questions are, you need the right data to answer those questions, to have the confidence to make that decision. And if you follow these sort of 4 key pillars, you know, strongly and wisely, you're going to succeed in getting that data asset right. So first one is about access. So here you've got to really think about, okay, well, I want to access multiple data sources, perhaps. So you could be looking at your sales data, your cost of goods data, your shipments data, whatever it is. You might have a data set already that you've got in-house. And it's about working out, well, what are you trying to extract? What's the question you're trying to use, and mapping that to the data. And if you don't have that data, working with someone like BCS, we can help you potentially source that data. And I'll show you a quick example of that shortly. Then it's about maximizing value from that, where you really integrate those data sources that I mentioned earlier. So merging multiple data sets together to bring a richer, more robust answer to your question. And that's about, I guess, typically speaking, somewhere where someone like a data engineer would play a big role in working through the data sets, creating a code or scripting it to sort of sing in harmony, so to speak. So it's really about, I guess, playing to your strengths and making sure you've got the right skilled people in that space. Finally, you want to make sure it's clean. So there's sort of, you know, simply put, it's about profiling the data that you want, including the right sort of hygiene practices, making sure there's no duplicates, that sort of stuff, making sure it's all formatted consistently. And remember, this isn't about just sort of doing it the first time. It's about making sure you set up the process to do that continually. So you might want to continually ingest data, whether that's sort of daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it is. You will be getting new data depending on your business question. So you want to make sure that once you've set it up for success, it's really just a maintenance pattern that you're exploring within your organization. And then finally, governing that, which is really about policy management and how do you sort of build in some security protocols, making sure that you've got alerts and monitors for anything that sort of perhaps hasn't worked as it should, and drawing those lineage or relationships between the data sets. And that's about making sure you've got a plan of how your users can engage with that data set. So again, you know, that single source of the truth, thinking about that. but building in a security barrier so that should anything sort of not work as it should, you're notified, it's corrected, and there's a plan of action to address that. So here's a good example of something we've sort of worked on for a customer, which was really about thinking about how can we access data, how can we integrate it, clean it, and govern it. It was really to do with ratings and reviews data. So I'm sure many of us have bought products online. Maybe not all of us have bought nappies, but I did many years ago. My boys are now older. And it's about going, okay, well, there's a lot of data about how customers are feeling towards products. So think about that as a concept, and you're going, okay, well, there's a lot of rich data potentially available in that space. And we were sort of working with a customer on, well, how can we extract value from that? But just to sort of take a step back, how did this come to fruition? It was really about the first thing on the left there, where the customer was sort of going, well, actually, look, we really want to get a much better view of our online consumer. What are they saying about our product online? What's the feedback coming through? What's the sentiment online for our product? So if we're selling something on Amazon or Woolworths or wherever it is, what are our customers saying about us? So like me, I'm sure many of you read reviews when you're sort of purchasing certain products to get an understanding of, what's the product going to be delivering? How are other people using the product and feeling about it? So they wanted to get a really good view of their online customer and what they're thinking. And they wanted to use that to drive innovation within their business. So they knew that their business was growing online. It was becoming a much bigger, more important channel, but they were sort of running blind a little bit in understanding the online shopper. So we sort of started off with a bit of an exploratory conversation. So it wasn't anything that was fully mapped out. We had that high level business need. So thinking about the practices that we spoke about earlier on, and then we worked through it. And really, I guess where we came up was sort of identified a couple of hypotheses that the client wanted to sort of extract from this data, which was around, let's say they might want to understand a bit about pricing, packaging, some of the core marketing, Ps that you want to really drive and focus on. Those were some good business questions, and they had some intuition, maybe some other data sets that were giving them some insights already. And what we proposed was, well, there's actually a rich data source in ratings and reviews online. So we agreed that, here's what we'd be looking for. Here's the way we go about it. So BCS built some custom APIs. We scraped some data from the web. It's all public data, so it's sort of available. And we worked out, well, which channels are we actually going to focus on? So Woolworths, Chemist Warehouse, Amazon, whatever it was that we were sort of seeking to understand. And then I think this is where the beauty comes in. When you partner with an organization such as SAS, not all of us are data scientists. I'm certainly not. It's really about going, okay, well, now we've got all this rich data and we know what we're trying to answer. How can we apply a model to extract that insight from the data set that we have? So you might not have an analytical team. You might not have models ready to roll out. And this is where someone like SAS plays a critical role, where for 47 years, they've been building solutions to answer these questions. So they've got the answer ready to roll out for your organization.
It's interesting what we're seeing in the sentiment analytics space is some organizations who have traditionally relied on, processes such as NPS scoring have actually now, because of their sentiment analytics capability and understanding the context behind words and customer feedback, they've actually scrapped NPS because they're finding that the analytical models that they're building and deploying are actually a lot more accurate in real time, and they don't rely on a biannual survey or a quarterly survey. They're actually getting real-time understanding of how their customers are, rating their products or rating their services. So, when we talked about matching the questions with the decisions around customer is really important, and sentiment analytics is an area that, we've been working a lot in all different sizes of organizations.
And I love that, because it is really about, with this customer working out, okay, well, how often do you want to see how those insights or those sentiments are changing, right? And you work out, well, actually, we could run this model daily if we wanted to, right? Or hourly, really, depending on the data set. And once you've sort of set it up, it's really just about sort of turning that on and sort of extracting that at the right time for your business. So here's it, and I'm going to show you what the SAS sort of tool looks like very shortly. But I guess very quickly, what I wanted to show you was, well, we spoke about getting data access and finding the right data and what it looks like. And this is just a screenshot of sort of some data we got from Amazon. So we built an API, and really what that means is we can extract the data from the Amazon website for the products that we want whenever we want. So, you know, if it's weekly, monthly, etc., it's now ready to sort of extract new ratings and reviews, insights from customers. So you can see here very quickly, really what it brings out is product ID. You've got sort of the product name. So in this case, we were looking at nappies. What brands were they really? So it's sort of, if I scroll down the list here, you'd see different brands like Pampers, Huggies, etc. What commodities? So we looked at nappies and wipes. And then here you can start to see, I don't want to show too much because it's sort of going to take too long, but really you can see here they've got sort of the feedback or the actual text that's coming through from the online rating and review and the content of that. And then we've sort of got the ratings here. So you get a real sense of, okay, well, we've got some real insights on the ratings, lots of text in there, but how are we going to extract some value from that? So sure, we can create a mean average of the score and go, yeah, I'm a 4-star rating, but that's not really telling you much about what does 4 stars actually mean and how do you compare to your competitors and what's driving those 4 stars, which sort of facets of your product are really delighting customers or the opposite, really causing some concern. So let me show you what we did. So we managed to gather this data, and look, I guess very quickly, I'm going to play a 3-minute video. So stay tuned. The purpose of the video is to sort of show you a little bit about, okay, I've got my data set. How do I load it into the SAS platform? So there's a 3-minute video just to show you how we've loaded it in. And the purpose of this is not to sort of teach you how to do it. It's really to give you a high level view of, actually, this is pretty simple to do. Anyone, not from a statistical background or an analytical background, could really work out how to sort of bring this data in. And that's the beauty of SAS. They've guided us through the step-by-step process of how to bring in the data. And then I'll show you another video which sort of talks about how you can apply some of those models. So just bear with me while I bring up the video.
And while James sets up that video, if anybody has any questions, post them in the Q&A or the chat. I'm monitoring that, and start thinking about, you know, those questions in your organization, and hopefully these, you know, sort of live demos, the video demo content will stimulate some thoughts as well.
Do it and check the dashboard and what options we have to implement our visual analytics and text analytics.
So this is loading the data. So think about how easy this is to do. My colleague's going to just sort of walk you through some of the steps.
This is our SAS Drive Share and Collaborator screen. Let's see what options do we have here. As you can see, this is our menu, and where manage and prepare data is basically for uploading the data set into the SAS iCloud. Then you can see explore and visualize, where you can visual analytics and perform it. You can do text analytics on build models and manage all the different kinds of models here. You can share and collaborate, as you can see on the screen, with other collaborators. Here you can customize your graphs and definitely manage your environment around. So let's first upload our data. Let's go into the manage data. So welcome to the SAS Data Explorer, where you can manage your data. These are all the inbuilt available or uploaded data sets. These are the data sources where you can upload your documents in any of these folders. So here is the one where you can import your folder. So let's import our file here. You can go to local files. You can either upload your CSV file from this local file, or you can upload your Excel sheet here. As we have an Excel sheet, let's upload our Excel sheet here. So now you select your document and upload it in the systems. So it's showing both of the worksheets that are available there. We just want to deal with the babies right now. So we are removing the attributes, and here the default import setting is public. I just want to make it a little bit protected. So I just always select SAS admin or SAS user folder. And then you can just either cancel the import or replace the file if it's already here. We can just say cancel the import, and we say add. And here you can see the options you have. You can save as in-memory table only, but we will just share as CSV. You can give a label name. I will say here is nappies_wipes, and then here the first row, we click the first row contains the column names, so yes, and then we just select import all. As I already uploaded the file, I will not select them. I will just this was just a quick demo how to upload the file. So now you can just, I'll just delete this, and as you can see here, if I go into our data sources and the SAS user admin, you can see I already uploaded the files here. As I click on it, you will see the dashboard, and definitely you will see all the columns that are here. Let's see what it says. Here are the name of the columns where we have product ID, product name, gender, the type of information that's inside it, the number of rows in columns, the tags, and definitely when it was uploaded, and every information related to it, the number of rows in columns as well. So now let's
So that was just a quick demo. I think, look, 3 minutes to show you how to import a data file. In this case, I guess the purpose was to show you, look, it's brought in all the files at the top of our sort of columns in the Excel file I showed you. So we've got all the right dimensions in the data set. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen there, in this case, we had sort of over 2,000 rows of reviews, right, of data sets. And it took less than a minute to import this data. So the purpose here is to say, look, you know, the data access and data management piece, you know, the SAS platform in this case was really perfect for us in this space to sort of bring in that data set before we start to apply some of the science and some of the modeling to it. So we've got it in the right format now to sort of crunch the numbers, for want of a better term. I'm now going to show you sort of the sort of further part of the journey. We've skipped a lot of steps here. Look, this is in no way a sort of demo of what SAS can do. It's really just a high level, quick snapshot. You know, we're talking about just using one of their models, which is text analytics. Of course, they've got all the visual Power BI, visual outputs included in here, a number of other models, but really it's about accessing the right model for the right question. So one more file from my side. Okay, 1 second, everybody. We're ready to go. Just one more. Hopefully you guys can see that.
And we save it.
I'll just restart.
Let's create our project on text analytics.
So this is using the model. Project,
and we name them nappies_wipes, and then we browse our data set where we uploaded. So the data source, SAS user folder, and our data set is here. So let's upload it. And the description would be rating and reviews project, and we save it. So once it's done, we are onto this screen where we have to define from where we have to pick up the text analysis. So we will click on reviews, and we will say you have to pick up the text from here, and we have to categorize those texts. So we would say we would do on the basis of product categories, and we will say it's category. So once we are done with this, we would just go to pipelines tab, and here the flowchart is already created. You can see data, concepts, text parsing, sentiment, topics, and categories. So we will run this pipeline and check the output of our text analysis.
So just very quickly, those are essentially all the custom built models from SAS. So when I spoke about they already have it sort of ready to roll out, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So in this case, obviously sentiment is one of the things we're really looking for in ratings and reviews.
So now, as you can see, our pipeline has been run and it has finished successfully. So let's click on categories and just open it. And you will see the output that we already created in our data set on the basis of programming, but here you can do everything automatically without any effort. Like you can see here, our product categories are Qresh, Huggies, Pampers, and all the sub-brands. Here you get the sentiments, where you can see that customers' reviews are showing happiness, or they are showing sadness, or they are neutral about it. And here it's the word count, which are the common words that has been picked as per the category. Like you can see here that 1001 frequency word for the nappy word. Here you can see from this part you can derive what has been the problem or what has been the key points for the success of the product, whereas somewhere you can see the money has been the issue, or you can say the leakage has been the problem, or you can clearly derive the delivery is not good. So many people, 145 people, are saying that they are recommending this product. So you can derive many things from it. Now to present all this information in a graphical format.
So I'll pause it there, just because I'm conscious of time. But hopefully that gives you a flavor for really, I guess, where SAS has been applied in this case on that ratings and review data to really extract sentiment from that text, right? So what are we trying to extract from that data in terms of understanding that customer feedback and opinions and sentiment that that client could use in their innovation? So whether it was about packaging or product or price or whatever it was, in this case, you saw a 7-minute demo there really of bringing data in, running a SAS model, and obviously you missed some of the sort of visual interpretations of that data, but there's sort of a whole heap of templates and structures in the way that you can do that. So I'll now hand you back to Jono to sort of bring us onto the next step of what's really possible, right? And the art of what's possible. So let me just share my screen. Thanks for bearing with me while I'm sharing the screen, everybody.
It's always a challenge doing software demonstrations over Zoom. So appreciate that, James, and know there's a lot of steps in between, but certainly in my experience, loading data into the environment is really simple, and running those out of the box sort of models is really, really valuable for any organization. So, obviously it's really cool to see it in action. Now we're entering into a phase where we talk about the art of the possible. So we start thinking about what opportunities, we start thinking about where organizations are doing it well, and trying to apply that to how we do things in our business. So obviously we looked at that data ops and that manage data, develop models, deploy models, data ops, model ops sort of life cycle. And it is a life cycle. And I could see there were some questions coming in the chat, a lot about how do we set things up so that it's repeatable? How do we future-proof things? So I'm starting to do my own manual text analytics on the questions that are coming in, and I'm getting a flavor of let's make this process repeatable, continuously improve, continuously develop. So I sort of alluded to that earlier, where I talked about breaking down the silos and creating a capability which can be repeatable, a process which can be repeatable. So there's a broad spectrum of, sort of analytical capabilities around this whole life cycle, around this whole value chain, right? From the most basic data management. One of the things I'm seeing a lot of organizations do, particularly in the financial services space, is actually using AI and machine learning to profile their data. So even just running some models across your data sets and your data assets, particularly if you're starting to build a data transformation program, or you're wanting to understand where there might be gaps in your data, there's certain procedures that you can run, particularly SAS procedures, which can run across and profile that data and look for particular anomalies or issues with that data, and help you speed up cleansing and cleaning that data. You know, something as simple as having the same customer multiple times in your systems, but in one particular area, their address is slightly different, or, you know, there's a capital letter and a lowercase letter. And so you've created like 5 versions of the same customer. Well, do you know there's data quality procedures that you can run, which are quite advanced, called quality knowledge bases, where you can just run that data through a system and it'll cleanse and standardize that whole process for you. And those things take, you know, little time. I'm working with policing organizations that do that on all their addresses. So they update all their address and standardize all their addresses of offenders and, you know, people who are victims of crime, and they're doing that in real time. So it's not like something that you have to wait days and weeks to get clean data. In the visualization space, I'm seeing a lot of exploration. I'm seeing the use of more advanced tools for visualization. For instance, you know, visualizing data in new and innovative ways. So not just using the old, you know, sort of bar charts and line charts, but using things like tree maps and using things like bubble plots, and really enhancing and understanding and thinking about the cognition of that data and how you expose that to the business. Forecasting and optimization is a no-brainer. You know, I'm seeing organizations that don't have skills in forecasting. I mean, not everybody has done a university degree in econometrics or time series modeling. As you said, James, earlier, not everybody is a data scientist, right? So, you know, having out of the box drag and drop forecasting objects, so that when you load, in the same way that James just showed, you load some time series data into there with some revenue or price, you can then drag and drop a forecasting object and it will automatically build a forecast model for you, you know, and it does it automatically. So it cycles through 14 different time series models, and then it'll pick the right model for you and you can streamline that process. You know, in the computer vision and machine vision space, I'm seeing a lot of fantastic stuff being done, you know, particularly around understanding call sentiment. So the demo which James showed use sort of traditional sort of text topics analytics techniques, which look at words and attribute sentiment to particular words that are used, either negative or positive. And that's sort of a traditional means in to do it. But I'm working with financial services organizations that are actually looking at the waveform of an audio call, and they're actually using the shape of the wave of the audio call to understand the level of volume and the decrease and increase in volume for the customer. So then they're enriching that text analytics with additional metadata, which are then combining in their processes. You know, decision management, like there's so many different areas of opportunity. I think, you know, you've got to be curious, you've got to think outside the box and start thinking about how you can use some of these techniques and, you know, these modern approaches in your business. So you can actually solve many problems. I think the any problem, I think there's certain problems, you know, that multiple AI capabilities may not be able to solve. I've got my own personal problems that I don't think AI is going to solve. But, you know, I think if you think about your business, right, we talk about this concept of composite AI. So using multiple AI techniques within your business to streamline and enhance and increase revenue and increase customer satisfaction. So it's not just applying one model or one question or solving one problem. It's about how can we actually start adding them on top of each other to create additional value within the business. So, you know, in the machine learning and deep learning space, automatically finding insights hidden in your data without being told where to look. You know, in the natural language processing space, it's about helping systems understand, analyze, generate, and interact with human language. I'm seeing the application of natural language processing a lot in chatbots. So, you know, rather than having just a website that your customer goes to where they call a number and then you're getting smashed with phone calls, knowing that actually having a chatbot on your website and understanding what topics most people are going to be wanting to ask about your product and building that into a natural language generation process means you can reduce the number of calls you're getting. You can increase customer satisfaction because they're getting the responses rapidly without having to send an email and wait 2 days to get a response. You know, so those types of generation and interacting with human language, I'm seeing a lot of value coming out of that. Obviously, I've mentioned the computer vision. Computer vision isn't some black box dark arts. It's actually real. Like, a lot of organizations are leveraging it, and they're leveraging it in ways you would never even imagine. So particularly if you've got a lot of image data, or you've got a lot of video data, or you've got audio streams, computer vision is a really, really powerful tool. I mean, I'm even seeing computer vision applied in warehouse environments, you know, so they've got a camera set up in the warehouse, or they've got a series of cameras that are streaming live footage of the warehouse, and they're actually doing stock take. So they're using computer vision models to count and analyze how much of whatever stock. They're looking at the movement of employees. So they're looking for safety concern. Are they wearing PPE equipment? Are they wearing face masks? Are they compliant with COVID, you know, restrictions and regulations? And they've built all of that into models that they then embed in the cameras. So they're doing smart stuff where those models are running in real time, so they don't have to send all of that image data back to some centralized system. It's operating at the edge, and all it's doing is sending back an alert or a trigger when something is violated or the information they need to extract. So think about how you can carefully and considerably use these composite AI techniques in your business. And forecasting, we've spoken about, you know, once again, it's not dark arts. It's something that's being applied across the board. Optimization is probably one of my key strengths and one of the key strengths of SAS. Closing that loop, that holy grail. How do we continually improve and get feedback with a set of constraints? So, you know, you can really solve many problems with multiple AI capabilities. And so just start thinking about that in the way that you do things in your business. So I'm aware we've got, how long? We've got only a couple minutes left. So I wanted to very quickly cover off, well, where do you start? You know, obviously we have what we call an analytics quick start workshop. So SAS and BCS have come together to create this really available sort of to your needs analytics workshop. It looks like multiple things. I've ran workshops that go for half an hour, 2 hours. We basically bring stakeholders into the room from your business, and we start actually tackling what are those questions going to look like? What kind of analytics techniques might you start considering? What's your data like? And we can even start with a free discovery session. So if there's an area that you've seen today that you're really highly interested in, then definitely reach out to both James or Amrish from SAS, and we're happy to support you with that. So I did see there were some questions in the chat. Do we have time, David, or do you want to cover them up?
We'll probably reply to that one, and we'll send them an email rather than, because I know everybody's sort of time poor and have got sort of Zoom call after Zoom call these days. So I'll let people go. I just wanted to thank you guys so much for speaking today. It was such an informative session, and really I got so much out of it. I must admit I've got quite a few questions, so I'll definitely have to follow up. If anybody wants to follow up, they can also email me, and I'll certainly get in contact with James and Jonathan. As mentioned at the start of the presentation, we will share the slides, and we will send a copy of the presentation following the meeting. So thank you, James and Jonathan. We'd love to have you back again another time, because today's session was so great. We might have to allow a little more time next time, I think. But thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thanks very much for having us. And thanks to the audience for staying tuned.